The Trump administration, on Wednesday, June 5th, announced that the National Institutes of Health would no longer be funding research that required fetal tissue from elective abortions. In addition, the Department of Health and Human Services said that they would immediately cancel a $2 million contract with the University of California for research involving fetal tissue from abortions. Now, fetal tissue has a long history of being used in the development of model systems that were used in research to develop vaccines for things like polio and measles and rabies. Currently, NIH projects are using fetal tissues as models for research into the development of cures or vaccines for Zika and for HIV. Researchers were using information from that fetal tissue to develop immune systems in mouse models that were similar to our own. That way, they could use those immune system models to test targeted cures and vaccines for HIV. That project at the University of California is now canceled. Kind of ironic to defund a project that was looking into cures for HIV when just back in February in the State of Union address, we had the whole spiel about ending AIDS in America, coming from the Trump administration. I am not a political commentator. I don't put myself in a position of talking too frequently about politics. However, we are in the midst of an election season coming up, and this move by the Trump administration is nothing more than a political panhandling to his constituency, his base of followers, to gain traction in their support as the voting season comes up. Political commentary in our country and the notion that everybody's opinion, no matter how uneducated, carries an equal weight in a political debate is damaging to our science community. We are in the middle of the worst measles outbreak in the history of our nation when we have a vaccine to that disease. Americans are no longer vaccinating their children. Our herd immunity is weakening and kids are dying. And now we ban the very research that's being used to help these kids to find cures to these diseases. And abortion proponents will argue things like, well, you can make your own stem cells in a lab. And that is true. Scientists and laboratories have done a workaround towards fetal tissue issues in the past, and we've developed the technology to make human-induced pluripotent stem cells. But that is not a perfect science. Doing our genetic reprogramming of cells to kind of revert them back to their undifferentiated state does not mean that those induced stem cells are exactly the same and function in exactly the same way as the actual fetal cells themselves. And to that argument, at what point is a stem cell equivalent to a human life that deserves its dignity and can no longer be researched with? If I pull a skin cell off of my arm and I reduce that into a stem cell that functions the same way as a fetal tissue cell, that's okay. But if I take an actual fetal cell that has the same phenotypic properties as my induced stem cell, that's not okay. It's political bullshit that's being spewed by people that know nothing about science, but are obsessed with this war on abortion. Carolyn Coyne is a scientist at the University of Pittsburgh who is attempting to do research that will actually save babies from debilitating brain damage effects caused by Zika virus. Coyne uses placenta tissue in her lab because she's interested in studying how the Zika virus gets past this protective barrier into the fetus during pregnancy. The placenta is considered fetal tissue because it is produced by the fetus. With this research ban going into effect, all of this fetal tissue will be considered medical waste. It will literally be incinerated. We will take it, have it, not be able to do a goddamn thing with it, and then throw it away as trash. We're promoting a country of willful ignorance. Scientists rely sometimes on model systems, like the placenta tissue from monkeys, but it's no substitute for studying the actual human organ for a human pathological study. Some of the other diseases that are being looked at by scientists from a fetal tissue standpoint for cures and treatments that are now in the danger zone of having their funding cut include Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injuries, various eye diseases. There's not a populace of people that are getting abortions for the purpose of scientific research. These fetal tissue samples are opportunistic in nature. I am not a woman, and I may struggle to empathize and put myself in the shoes of what it could possibly feel like to be a woman that goes through one of the most difficult choices she may ever have to make in her life. But I can attempt to sympathize with the incredibly difficult experience they might be going through. And it's certainly possible that some of these women that can't go through their full pregnancy might find some level of comfort and solace in the knowledge that tissue samples from their abortion are going to be used for medical research that can find these cures. We are so unfathomably close to a cure to HIV. We've learned so much about how the virus has worked. It's the middle of Pride Month, and the disease went from being advertised as gay cancer in American newspapers to being one of the most researched and well-understood viruses in our country. Don't cut this research now. Don't stop it over political panhandling. I would urge the Trump administration to reconsider this research ban. More than that, I would urge Congress to take all of the steps necessary to override this damaging ban and to preserve the promise of biomedical research that will save millions of lives. Thank you for watching, and stay inquisitive. Bye.